Massively underrated album here. So underrated I had to create its Rate Your Music page myself. Royalston takes a cerebral and almost minimal approach to drum and bass music on his new album, Popular Mechanics. Yes, I just read out the blurb in the description. I will talk about the actual music now. So my experience with drum and bass music isn't so deep or long lasting or like the most experienced out there, but I have been the enjoyer of many an album in this style, from Pendulum to Goldie. It was even last year that I reviewed the Noisia album Outer Edges, which was a lot more off kilter and wonky and completely off the wall, but it was one of my favorites for that year. And outside those releases that I just mentioned, I have familiarized myself with the style enough to make a fair judgment call, and I just wanted to kind of bring up this album because it's not getting enough exposure. It's often that either in the drum and bass field you'll get a wispy atmospheric style, or maybe some stuff that goes like harder and heavier and more pummeling. So Royalston kind of reaches a nice middle ground here, although there is still force and power, but it's a lot more subtle and restrained. Except for the track Diorama, which is probably one of the harder hitting cuts, especially come its drop. But when it comes to kind of the more cerebral and minimal stuff, that's where this album kind of shines a little bit more. Take the opening track of the late heavy Bombardment for instance. This thing doesn't have a heavy drop, but the spikes of bass that pound during that moment are satisfying in their own like minimal yet impactful way. The little spidery synths kind of crawling over the top are also a really nice touch and keep the track from feeling stagnant or samey. This thing actually feels like it's rushing from point A to point B. It's moving forward and it feels so fluid as well. Every single drop here just kind of rushes during its final few minutes. The track We Were Told has a fantastic vocal feature from Amy Kisborno, whose wispy and rather ghostly vocals angelically sail over the instrumental, which carries a chord progression that is very beautiful and suspenseful, reminding me of the ending music to the movie Sunshine. It's actually quite an awe-inspiring moment, and coupled with Amy's lyrics, this is a stunner on the record, and she appears yet again for the track Who Did She Become, where the combination of the production and the vocals shows a lot of that whispery, ghostly beauty yet again. Other vocal features include the dark and deep and kind of doomy rap vocal from Lifelike on Fork Tongue. You have Thavi Ear who sings on Strobes, and Victoria on The Sound We Made. These vocal guests seem to do like a good job of just kind of riding the instrumentals that Royalston creates, which is quite impressive considering that at times they are a little bit like jumpy and wonky. Oh no, just a little bit unconventional at times. Although the grooves are certainly there, there's still like a rhythm you can latch onto and kind of ride. The track Spladerunner features some gorgeous piano arpeggios at the start, but the drop is just so much more odd and minimal, and Royalston scatters so many strange sounds over the top, and they actually do keep things eventful and even a little bit glitchy sounding. 15 Gamma is similar in that it's another very spidery track with some nice electronic synth freakouts like the sound of a computer busting and bleeping, and the rhythm of Cruising doesn't really use breakbeats, but it still bumps hard with a catchier, dancier groove that stomps more than it does sprint. And the track Strobes is start to finish the most beautiful and serene track here, with those glistening piano chords and a beat with percussion that doesn't really pound loudly but rather just lightly skips over. So as you can tell from all my listing of the different ideas that Royalston brings to the table, it's clear that he has plenty to show for himself, despite most of the cuts falling under a very similar categorical umbrella, even a similar structure. Often there are misfires on how a track might transition from a serene moment to a heavier moment without much in the way of a tidier click together. Sometimes they don't quite transition that well. Still, I think it's awesome to hear the many off-kilter and experimental approaches to groove and texture that Royalston does here, and it all pays off really well. Royalston's Popular Mechanics gets a 7 out of 10.